As you know, we just heard a state of the state by our Governor Martinez. Let me first introduce our whip, Michael Padilla, and our caucus chairman, Jacob Candelaria, and I thank them for being here and all of you for being here. Quite an interesting speech, to say the least. Let me tell you that it really takes courage to admit when you're wrong. And I got to tell you, the governor needs to admit she's wrong on education and on right to work. She's dead wrong. And I'll get into those points in just a few minutes and explain why. It also takes courage, since she had those two young people who our hearts go out to from Roswell, really go out to, and the gun violence that affected their lives. But I asked the governor then, if you have courage, Governor, then why don't you close the gun show loophole? Why don't you put locks on firearms in home? Why don't you come out strong in terms of the people that can get weapons? It takes courage over politics, Governor. It takes courage. That was the theme of her speech, courage. Well, it works both ways. Let me just tell you some of the differences that we have in terms of right to work legislation. And basically, it's not right to work. We all know that. That's just a term they use to incite people's emotions. Basically what it is anti-worker legislation. And they know that. It's a smokescreen. It's smoke and mirrors. Because they can't talk about what was done in the last 4 years to bring economic development and jobs to the state of New Mexico. So they have to use an excuse, just like the city of Albuquerque. People are leaving our state. Jobs aren't coming into our state. And it's not because of right to work. When we talk to the site selectors, when we ask them, what are you looking for in terms of coming to New Mexico? They say it's not that old thinking, because that is old thinking. They're looking for location. They're looking for people who want to work. They're looking for excellence. And we have that here in the state of New Mexico. It was interesting that the governor stated that right to work or these labor laws, I won't even use the terminology anymore, that there's an increase in salaries for different individuals in those states. Well, that's not exactly true. And maybe we just have different information, because workers make an average of $7,000 less each year than workers in state that protect workers' economic security. Also, the quality of life in those states is far worse. There are higher poverty levels. There are fewer people with health insurance through their employers. The public education funding is weaker. Right now in New Mexico, we have some of the lowest median incomes in the nation. How low does the governor want us to go? You have to think about that. These laws are going to hurt people. They're going to hurt communities. Think of it. They're trying to hurt firefighters, our first responders, police, social workers, caseworkers that she talked about. Those are the people it will affect. Teachers. Those are the people it will affect, as well as those in the private sector unions, where people are not required to join the union. They're only required to pay their fair share, because the union represents them on every single issue: wages, health care, leave. So this smokescreen that they're putting up, once again, is simply to avoid talking about the failures of economic development that this administration has had over the last 4 years. You know, this policy gives a lot of strength to out-of-state corporations, and that speech seemed to be all about out-of-state corporations and bringing them in. Well, you know, I like the idea of helping our small businesses. That's what it's all about in New Mexico. But I heard a lot about out-of-state corporations. You know, we as Democrats understand the daily struggles and anxieties of ordinary New Mexicans. Working people need a strong voice in the workplace today, and that's why the Democrats will be against the right to work legislation. We will defeat it in the Senate. We will defeat it. But that's not the half of it. And I didn't hear anything today about the minimum wage. You know, she kept talking about caring about children. Well, it's interesting, and I brought this up in different speeches that I've given in the last 2 months. I have a young lady who is a teacher who is making $31,000 a year. After taxes, she's making $21,000 a year. She has 2 children. Her husband walked out on her the other day. And I didn't bring her here. I don't need to showcase her for a photo op. I just need to tell you the story. And she's telling me, how am I going to pay for food? How am I going to pay for their education? The other extracurricular activities that we have. I can't live off of this. That's why the Democrats are going to propose, not just for teachers, but for others, an increase in teacher salaries across the board. Not just for those first-year teachers. We need to keep our experienced teachers who know what they're doing in our schools, who this administration has failed to listen to time after time after time. We're going to fight for a minimum wage, a living wage. And I guess my question to the governor, or rather, well, it's a request. Governor, if you think you can live on $7.25 an hour, go do it for a month. Go out into the community, rent a home, rent an apartment, and then tell me that we don't need a minimum wage increase. If you remember last year, we had a minimum wage bill that the governor vetoed. And then it was interesting because after the session ended, she stated that, oh, now maybe I would have signed another minimum wage bill. Well, you know, Governor, that's not good enough. And that doesn't help my teacher with the 2 kids. If you really care about kids, shouldn't we give the people of the state of New Mexico, the hardworking people of the state of New Mexico, an increase in their salary? Shouldn't we increase that minimum wage for those kids? Governor, tell me. What are we going to do and how are we going to feed those kids? You know, she ignores the fact that we have poverty in this state. Didn't hear any mention about the poverty that we have in our state. No mention of those children. Nothing. Well, how are we going to take care of those children? How are we going to feed those children? What are we going to do to help those children? We need to do and get a minimum wage increase, and we need to do it today. We need to do it today. We're also going to, the Democrats, propose a Paid Family Leave Act, and I believe Senator Candelaria is going to be the sponsor of that particular bill. You know, she talked about young people and getting jobs, but you know what? We need more than just giving them jobs. We need to get them to have a career. And that means we need to pay them for their services, for what they do for us. We need to close those tax loopholes for the big corporations and get them for our small businesses. We really need to work on the small businesses here in the state. Education was another major factor that the governor brought in. You know, again, this story of retention of 3rd graders and children not reading. Well, children read at the 3rd grade level. Some just read better than others. Some can take a test better than others. Some have been fed better before they go to school. Holding a child back hurts a child. Taking teachers and parents out of the equation hurts the teacher, hurts the children, hurts the school district. Reasons why she would hold them back, or not hold them back, or hold them back rather, is that They cause problems later on. Well, that goes back to the issue of hunger and poverty. That goes back to early childhood education, which, if you'll remember, she didn't talk about. And Michael Padilla is going to be introducing that bill once again to try to get that early childhood education started. You know, part of the reason that some students don't learn anymore or aren't learning anymore, and I kind of doubt that statement, to be honest with you, but teachers aren't teaching like they used to. Teachers now are more worried about these standardized tests that we are giving them, that they're being inundated with. I ask you to go back and remember when you were a child, how many tests you took when you went through the school system. Not half as many that are being taken today. Teachers are now worried about teaching to the test rather than other subjects. You know, going back to the reading issue, here's how the reading issue goes. If you score a 150, well, if the test score for proficiency is 150, and you score a 149 on that reading test, then they hold you back. It doesn't matter whether you're great in math, social studies, or other. They're going to hold you back because you didn't get that particular number. So it doesn't seem to make sense to me to hold back one of those students. And it has been proven through other studies that those students who are not reading as proficiently as others do, in fact, succeed. I think Senator Soule said it best at one point in time. He said 84% of the others always make it. And I'm not saying it as well as Senator Soule's, but 84% of those people that are promoted, that go to the next level, they're the ones that graduate and go on to college. You know, again, admitting you're wrong is a hard thing to do for anybody, but especially for this governor. I wish she'd just admit that the Florida model is wrong. Florida model is wrong for New Mexico. It's just wrong, and it's been proven wrong in Florida itself. Other states are now going away from it. They're not following it any longer. They understand that it was just there for political gain and nothing else. So, courage. It's an interesting word, but it works both ways, both to the legislature and to the administration. Once again, we're going to work very hard for early childhood education, and I hope that we can get that bill to the floor. Hope we can get it over the House and have a vote on that. And let's see how courage prevails over politics at that point in time. When we're talking about children, again, big part of her speech today, children. Do you know in this state we have over 100,000 children from undocumented immigrants? 100,000. So if she really cared about those children and how they would get to school, or how they would go to the doctors, or how they would just live the everyday life, and these are citizens just like us. They're born in America, born in New Mexico. Why would you want to take away the licenses of their parents? Why? If you care about kids, why do you want to take away those licenses? What's going to happen to those kids? The name I'm going to use is maybe familiar to some of you, is Cesar Quesada, a young man who had cancer who died 2 years ago. He had cancer. His parents were able to take him from doctor's visit to doctor appointment to prolong his life. He wrote a letter to the governor asking her to understand the plight of undocumented workers, not only in the state of New Mexico, but in the country, asking her not to repeal that license. We're going to fight as hard as we can to protect all the children of the state of New Mexico, including those children of undocumented immigrants in our state. The other reason why we're going to work so hard in terms of trying to protect or not have a repeal of these driver's licenses, it's a public safety issue. And as you'll remember, we wanted to know who was driving in our streets. The police want to know who it is that you have. When you get a driver's license, you have to show proof of insurance. You have to take certain exams. We want to know that the person driving the car is capable of driving the car. What happens if you repeal these driver's licenses? I'll tell you what will happen. People will be driving without licenses, without insurance, and when they get into an accident, we, the public, will end up paying for it. You know, it's interesting that the governor and I agree on anything. We haven't seemed to do that over the years. But today I was pleasantly surprised that she's taking the recommendation of the Legislative Jobs Council in terms of economic development in the state. And believe me, folks, we are in a crisis situation in the state of New Mexico as it comes to our economy, and we better turn it around. And we better turn it around this session. But I was glad she agrees with the LEDA fund, the closing fund, of up to $50 million. An increase in job training fund, the JTIP, that's from $5 to $12 million. It's a big incentive for a well-trained workforce, and I agree. It should be for small businesses as well as bigger businesses in our state. There's also $500 for the New Mexico Partnership nonprofit group, working with the Economic Development Department in business recruiting and marketing in rural areas. And I'm going to tell you one of the areas that is always left out when we're talking about economic development is our agricultural industry in this state. We need to protect our agricultural industry in this state, which has been one of the backbones of our economy for many years. People now aren't able to farm like they used to. Their kids are leaving the farm to go on to bigger and better things. We're selling out our water rights left and right, and we've got to be careful about selling our water rights. Water is one of the most important natural resources that we have in this state, if not the most important. You know, I was looking for some bold statement in terms of the economy from the governor, and I really didn't hear it. I heard a lot of spin. I mean, I just heard this is what we're doing, but I don't know how we're going to pay for all of the things that she brought out. We need to look for a center. We should be looking for a center for financial services. We should be planning and directing some of our attention to rural New Mexico, because the jobs in rural New Mexico are the hardest to come by. We should try to put infrastructure in place so that to attract the internet, so that we can have those businesses in the rural area. It's time we think outside of the box. It's time the governor starts listening to the people of the state of New Mexico in terms of the economy and how to get out of it. I heard a lot about how wonderful things were and how great a job she's done in certain areas. And it was interesting. Because I'll give you two areas where I didn't hear her talk about very much. And one of them is the behavioral health area in the state of New Mexico. I wonder why she failed to mention that she drove our behavioral health providers in the state of New Mexico out of business. I wonder why she forgot to mention that the Arizona companies that she brought in are now leaving the state of New Mexico, leaving those with mental health issues in the lurch. I wonder why she failed to mention that. You know, those people are the most vulnerable people we have in our state. These people need the counseling sessions, need the therapy, need the prescription drugs that they take on occasion. Wasn't a word mentioned about it. A fraud allegation against providers, which to date no one has been prosecuted on. There was no due process for those people providing the services to New Mexico. The Secretary, Squire, then said they committed fraud, therefore they're out of business. That's wrong for us in New Mexico. That's wrong for our country. Due process is a principle in our Constitution that our state failed to abide by. We're working on legislation to fix that issue. That's just one area that she forgot about. She talked a little bit about CYFD. She talked a little bit about CYFD, but what she didn't tell you, she says she wants more caseworkers to help out. But what she forgot to tell you is that she gave $6 million back to the legislature a year ago for caseworkers and management. I wonder why she forgot to mention that. And look at the turmoil that CYFD is in right now. They're understaffed, and the people that are there are overworked, and they're leaving the department because there isn't enough help there. You know, talk is really cheap. And, you know, you can talk the talk all day, but you know what, Governor, you need to walk the walk. And you need to do it now before any more of our children are harmed because of a lack of services in CYFD. We also, or she also forgot to talk about the DD waiver. You know, we're going to increase the DD waiver numbers. We're going to put more money into DD waivers. And for those of you who don't know what DD, it's developmentally disabled. It's been a waiting list for 20, 30, 40 years. People with developmental disabilities. In her budget, she didn't increase it. We're going to. But one of the things she forgot to mention again today was she hired an out-of-state corporation to come and do evaluations on New Mexico families. They set up a whole new guideline, or guidelines. And if you didn't answer the question correctly, then you're not going to get the services that you need. And she's done it over and over again, or this administration has done it over and over again, where people who are developmentally disabled haven't been able to receive the services that they need. You know, she also didn't talk about our environment. And you know, I know it's some things that people really don't like to talk about, don't think it's important, but go to a state that has massive pollution. Go to California if you really want to enjoy yourself in the smog. But we need to continue to monitor and make sure we have clean air in this state. We need to make sure we have clean water, drinkable water, sustainable water. We need to fight against any rule changes that diminish those protections that we have had over the number of years through the Richardson administration and prior to the Richardson administration. It just makes sense to protect our environment for those future generations that she's talking about. Those kids, our grandchildren. We also have missed an opportunity in the last 4 years for renewable energy. We're finding out now that oil and gas isn't sustainable, or rather the price of gas isn't sustainable. Thank goodness for all of us who drive a lot. We're getting lower gas prices at the pump. But for the state of New Mexico and its coffers, that hurts us. But we missed the opportunity that Governor Bill Richardson brought to us in terms of renewable energy and being a leader in renewable energy, wind, solar. We missed our opportunity because, well, some people may be beholden to oil and gas. And that person may be on the 4th and 5th floor. Who knows? I thought that'd get a little laugh out of you. You know, and while I'm talking on that subject, just let me say, I am so tired of her bringing up Bill Richardson in a bad light. You know, Governor, you've had 4 years. Your economic policies are bringing the state down. Jobs are leaving, people are leaving. Why do you want to bring Bill Richardson back into it? Are you running for something? Bill Richardson, and I'm not ashamed to say it, did a lot of good things for our state. He worked very hard for the people of our state. He was an innovator with new ideas. And believe me, I didn't agree with all of his ideas. But to keep dragging Bill Richardson through the mud, I mean, when is enough enough? When is enough enough, Governor? She talks about bipartisanship. Is that being bipartisan? Is that really working together with Democrats and Republicans? I can tell you I haven't seen any bipartisanship on her part. I have seen, Michael, you either do it this way or else. Michael, you either pass that law or else. That's what I've seen. If that's bipartisanship, hey then, let me out the door because I don't want any part of it. This process is to be worked on together with both Republicans and Democrats to come up with a consensus for a good, solid policy. A policy that is good for all of the people of the state of New Mexico, not just one side of the aisle or another. So we need to start really working on that type of bipartisanship, Governor. Let's see how you work it. Talk is cheap. Talk the talk or walk the walk. Let's see what happens. You know, she talked about the dreams of our children. And let me tell you, I'm a 60-something-year-old person who still has dreams. I still have dreams about a better world. I still have dreams that people will work together, want to do what's right for everybody, that we won't have any more discrimination, any more hate killings. I have those dreams that New Mexico can be the greatest state in the country. And I think New Mexico is one of the greatest states in the country. I was born here, I was raised here, and I'm going to die here. And I love the people of this state. And I get so tired of hearing people talk badly about our state. We are innovative, we are smart, we have people who have graduated from major universities through our educational system, who have gone on to be very well known throughout the country. So we need to start talking positively about our state and where we're headed. And talk about the good things. Talk about the positive things. That might lead to some type of bipartisanship. You know, after the speeches are forgotten today, Democrats will still be working to find solution to the challenges that we face. We are on the side of working people and their children. We are on the side of veterans and seniors, and we are every bit as optimistic that New Mexico's future is very bright. We share their hopes and dreams for the future, and we will work toward making the dreams and hopes of the people of the state of New Mexico come to a reality. I appreciate you being here, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them if I can.